Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. My birthday wish is for everyone to come into the sea with me and film a video, Quinn shouted excitedly. The men and women around her all clapped and cheered. My boyfriend Ethan was looking at her with a soft, indulgent smile on his face. Someone hesitantly said, "It's getting dark. Isn't it a little unsafe to go into the sea now?" But Ethan interrupted. Plenty of influencers have filmed videos like this before. What's unsafe about it? It's Quinn's birthday today. We should all listen to the birthday girl. Quinn threw herself into his arms in delight. Her cheeks flushed pink. Ethan, I knew you were the best to me. You have to walk at the very front with me. Okay. As she said this, she seemed to suddenly remember my presence beside them. She quickly pulled her hands away from Ethan's waist and stuck out her tongue, saying coyly, "Sorry, Maya. I got too excited. Ethan and I have been childhood friends since we were little, like siblings. You don't mind, do you?" Before I could respond, Ethan quickly spoke up. Of course not. Maya isn't the type to get hung up over small things. What we have is completely pure. She would never misunderstand. Right, babe? Everyone turned their faces to look at me. But in that moment, I was suddenly overwhelmed by the memory of my previous life. When Ethan drowned me in the ocean, I could feel the icy, bone-piercing cold of the seawater again. A shiver ran through my body before I could stop it. Ethan noticed and hurried to take off his jacket, draping it over my shoulders with a concerned look. "Honey, are you catching a cold? Do you want to go back to the hotel and lie down for a bit? You don't need to go into the sea for the filming later." As soon as he said that, the people around us began praising Ethan for being so considerate, saying how lucky I was to have such a caring boyfriend. But all I felt as I looked at his deliberately gentle expression was disgust. I lowered my eyes to hide the overwhelming hatred burning inside me. A moment later, I forced a smile and said warmly, "It's okay. Everyone's here to celebrate Quinn's birthday. What matters most is that the birthday girl is happy. How about this? Quinn and Ethan can lead the way, and I'll film the video for you too." Quinn, who had just been glaring resentfully because others were calling Ethan and me a model couple, immediately broke into a triumphant smile when she heard my suggestion. She instantly latched onto Ethan's arm, and the two of them began walking toward the sea. I picked up the nearby camera and did a quick check. The video titled Quinn's Birthday Celebration had been recording the whole time, capturing even the part where Ethan had encouraged everyone to follow Quinn into the water. The corners of my lips curled slightly as I adjusted my phone, setting up an automated call to the lifeguards on a timer. Then, as Quinn continued urging me, I followed them. "Quinn, turn back and smile at the camera while you walk," I called out. In the frame, Quinn and Ethan were all smiles, looking sweet and affectionate. But behind them, under the darkening sky, massive waves were rising and surging, just like in my previous life. Without warning, a violent storm arrived. Quinn and Ethan were caught off guard and swept away by the giant wave before they could react. The others who had been coaxed into the sea screamed as they frantically tried to swim back to shore, but they were too weak and kept being dragged further out by the waves. In my previous life, when Ethan and I arrived at the scene, this was exactly what we saw. That day, it had also been Quinn's idea to go into the sea and take pictures. I had warned them that this area of the beach had long been marked dangerous, and that it was best not to take the risk, but they mocked me for being cautious and not understanding romance. I wasn't close with the others, so I didn't feel any obligation to care about their lives. I simply pulled Ethan back to the hotel with me. I never imagined that decision would end up changing my entire fate. The storm hit hard. The tide rose violently. Everyone who stayed behind was swept away by the sea. Only Ethan and I, who had returned early, survived. All the people who went missing were Ethan's friends. So when he was stricken with grief, I didn't say a word of reproach. I stayed by his side patiently, constantly comforting him. To soothe his pain, we hastily got married. Soon after, I became pregnant. Only then did Ethan's emotional state finally stabilize. Later, he said he wanted to take me back to that same beach to relax, to let the friends who had been declared dead also hear the good news. I thought that by doing this, Ethan would finally let go completely. But I was wrong. Just as I was mourning quietly on the beach, Ethan suddenly forced me down into the water. His hand clamped tightly around my throat like an iron vice. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. I clawed at his body with all my might, struggling to break free, gasping in broken cries. "Ethan, let me go, the baby." But I was wrong again. The moment he heard the word baby, Ethan's expression turned even more twisted. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he had become a demon crawling straight out of hell. "You dare mention the baby? If you hadn't stopped me from going into the water, I could have saved Quinn. She was carrying my child." So that's what it was. That was the real reason behind Ethan's madness back then. But I no longer had the strength to feel grief or rage. The salty seawater surged into my nose and throat. Ethan drowned me right then and there in cold blood. At the very last moment before my death, I used every ounce of strength left in me to make a silent vow. If I ever got a second chance, I would make sure they paid for everything they owed in blood. I touched the mark still faintly visible on my neck from where he had strangled me. I removed the memory card from the camera and hid it carefully. Fortunately, I had contacted the lifeguards in advance. While most of the people who entered the water had sadly vanished beneath the waves, a small group was saved. The true culprits, Quinn and Ethan, were among those rescued. Ethan was still unconscious, unaware that Quinn, lying beside him, was pale as a sheet, blood seeping between her legs. The doctor who received her later diagnosed that she would never be able to have children again in this life. Ethan, who wasn't seriously hurt, regained consciousness shortly after. As soon as he opened his eyes, he looked around frantically. "Quinn, where's Quinn? Is she okay?" How touching, how sincere. I wore a sorrowful expression as I gently broke the news. "Ethan, Quinn is fine, but the baby didn't make it." Ethan's eyes went wide with shock, and he began gasping, making guttural noises. "The baby? What do you mean the baby's gone?" I sneered internally, but on the surface, I put on a stunned expression. "How did you know she was pregnant?" "I only found out after bringing her to the hospital." His still dazed brain stalled completely. After stammering for a long while, he finally forced out, She told me before. That's how I knew." I wasn't in a rush. Calmly, I dropped another bomb. How unfortunate. Not only did she lose the baby, but she also suffered damage to her uterus. The doctor said she won't be able to have children ever again. Ethan's face twisted instantly. Before I even finished speaking, he threw himself off the hospital bed. "I have to go see Quinn." I pretended to stop him. "Ethan, your body hasn't recovered yet." "Yes, Quinn lost her baby, but at least she's still alive. That's something to be thankful for. You should stay strong for her." His steps faltered and he nearly collapsed. "Maya, how can you be so cold? Quinn just lost a child." I looked at him with an innocent, confused expression. "Exactly. And I don't recall Quinn ever dating anyone. So, whose baby was it?" Ethan choked again, completely speechless. Luckily for him, a nurse came in right then and told me the police wanted to speak with me about the incident. That gave him a way to escape the conversation. What he didn't know was that I had asked the nurse to come in at that exact moment. Now exhausted from dealing with my questions, Ethan would have to face Quinn, who had just lost her child. I was curious to see what kind of drama those two would stir up next. And I wasn't wrong. The moment I stepped out of the room, Ethan scrambled out like a madman to find his dear childhood sweetheart. As soon as Quinn saw him, she threw herself into his arms and broke down crying. Ethan gently wiped away her tears, heart aching. "Quinn, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I didn't protect you." Tears shimmered in Quinn's eyes. "No, Ethan, it's not your fault. This is all because of Maya. She did this to me." And just like that, from outside the surveillance monitor, I watched myself become the scapegoat. On the hospital bed, Quinn's expression turned cold and dark. The nurse said it was Maya who contacted the lifeguards ahead of time, which is how we were saved. But if she had the foresight to call for help, why didn't she stop us from going into the ocean? Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. She even asked me earlier about your pregnancy. She must have found something out and deliberately tried to harm you." I had to admit, watching this mad woman and her equally deranged partner being so in sync, maybe they really were a match made in hell. Respect. Best wishes. Quinn gritted her teeth and hissed. If that's how she wants to play, don't blame me for fighting back. Ethan, let's go live and expose what she did to us. Ethan had only been in Quinn's room for less than half an hour. Yet the two had already mapped out their next move. In a freshly created live stream room, Quinn appeared pale and bloodless on screen, tearfully recounting her pain. I'm a victim of the July 21st sea disaster. In this tragedy, I lost the baby I was 3 months pregnant with. Her timing was perfect. Her stream exploded with popularity. Viewers poured in by the thousands. Right beside her, Ethan pulled her into his arms, gently patting her shoulder to comfort her. As a grieving mother, Quinn played the part flawlessly. She looked fragile, devastated, drawing immense sympathy. But of course, this whole tragedy wasn't without a cause. Once she had cried enough, Quinn began her smear campaign. But before she could even speak her accusations, I sent a highlighted, bold, pinned comment to the stream chat. Quinn, when exactly did you get pregnant? And where's your boyfriend? Why didn't he come with you on this trip? The moment it appeared, the more observant viewers started sensing something wasn't right. Yeah, seriously, where's your boyfriend? You were pregnant, and he still let you go into the ocean. That's beyond irresponsible. Wait, isn't the guy next to her supposed to be her boyfriend? The way they're looking at each other. Definitely not just friends. The comments exploded. People were now calling out names. The viewers clearly recognized Ethan. And just like that, the narrative shifted. Compared to serious issues, nothing grabs internet attention like juicy gossip. Thanks to my single comment, the entire direction of the chat changed. Half were slamming the mysterious, never-seen boyfriend for disappearing during a tragedy, and the other half insisted that Ethan was clearly the actual boyfriend all along. I struck while the iron was hot, hammering home another message. Quinn, don't be sad. The most urgent thing now is to notify the father of your child. Tell me who he is. I'll ask the police to help you reach him. You shouldn't have to shoulder this alone. Ethan, please help me talk some sense into her. My barrage of comments stunned Quinn into silence. Even the chat room audience was momentarily speechless. Wait, the one posting these comments? She's the girlfriend of the man beside Quinn. I found it. The official news report just came out. Look at this video. It shows the woman who called for help that night. That was Maya Lin. If it hadn't been for her, everyone involved in the July 21st disaster might have died. Look at her hand. She's wearing a ring. That must be the one Ethan gave her. No wonder she's commenting instead of going live. She's probably still busy handling the aftermath. Maya is seriously something else. Even after all this, she's still thinking about finding that deadbeat father Quinn mentioned. Quinn had no energy left to care how the public sentiment was evolving. On camera, she turned to Ethan with tears brimming in her eyes, her expression pitiful and delicate. Last night when we were filming the video, there was nothing on my finger. But when I woke up, there was suddenly a wedding ring on my hand. I had guessed correctly. The pain of losing the baby had dulled Quinn's mind. She completely forgot what her priority should have been right now. Instead of addressing the viewers' questions, she just gazed longingly at Ethan as if no one else existed. In my past life, Ethan had indeed secretly prepared a ring, but it had been a birthday gift for Quinn. After she died, he would clutch that ring late at night, drinking himself into a stupor. Later, he used that same ring to propose to me. Then, right before drowning me, he ripped it off my finger and screamed, "You have no right to wear Quinn's ring. You're the one who destroyed our happiness." Only then did I realize, even though he used my money to buy it, that ring was never meant for me. So this time around, let's return this ridiculously expensive ring to its rightful owner. When Ethan saw my comment in the live stream, his face turned stiff with panic. He couldn't, for the life of him, figure out how the ring had ended up on my hand. All he could do was clumsily wipe Quinn's tears and mumble some weak excuse while trying to soothe her. "Yeah, Maya. I was planning to propose to you. That's why we went to the beach in the first place. It was all for you. Quinn, please don't cry. If Maya hadn't wanted a seaside proposal, you wouldn't have helped me plan it and gotten swept into the waves. Maya, we have to cover Quinn's medical bills and my friend's compensation." Quinn leaned into his gentle words, a flicker of triumph flashing in her eyes. "It's okay, Ethan. It's not your fault. Did I cause trouble for you guys again? But today's internet users are a hybrid of Sherlock Holmes and professional tea readers. Plus, the subtle nudges from the comment bots I hired were already steering public opinion. To them, I was now some kind of heroic woman who had saved lives in a disaster. The comment section turned into a battlefield. So you're proposing to Maya, not the other way around. How the hell is this her fault then? I knew something smelled off. Now the guy is wiping tears off another girl's face. Seriously? Don't tell me the baby was his. At my girl run. This guy is cheating and wants you to pay for the mistress's medical bills too. Disgusting. Ethan was clearly rattled as the onslaught of accusatory comments filled the screen. But Quinn looked up at him with sparkling eyes, hopeful and trusting. So he had no choice but to double down on his lies. If Maya hadn't said she wanted a seaside proposal, I never would have gone into the water with Quinn and the others. I wouldn't have lost so many friends. Because of her, Quinn can't have children anymore. Don't you get that? Quinn bit her lower lip, eyes tearing, and sniffled as she spoke. I'm sorry, Maya. I was just really upset. My boyfriend's overseas and couldn't come back. Ethan and I grew up together, so he was just looking after me. Please don't be mad. I'll ask him to leave, okay? Their acting honestly deserved an award. Even some viewers in the live stream were starting to sway. Well, technically, they wouldn't have gone to the beach if Maya hadn't wanted the proposal. Yeah, cut her some slack. Quinn just lost a baby. Meanwhile, another group of viewers was telling me to dump Ethan immediately, convinced something was going on between the two of them. The comment section was in chaos. Right then, I pushed open the door to Quinn's hospital room. I hadn't even said a word when Ethan, caught in the act, immediately flipped the script. Maya, because of you, Quinn can't have children anymore. I was just keeping her company, and now it's all being twisted. Can you live with yourself? Can you live with what you've done to me? To her? I gave a sarcastic laugh, crossing my arms and staring him down. So according to your logic, because you wanted to propose to me by the ocean, I'm the one responsible for all of this. Then let me ask, if it weren't for Quinn's birthday party, why would we even be at the beach in the first place? The viewers caught on instantly. Wait, what? They were at the beach for a birthday party, not a proposal? Knew it. These two definitely have something going on. Maya girl, get out. That man is so not worth your time. Ethan's expression darkened visibly. He wasn't used to this side of me. I had always been gentle and agreeable in the past, so much so that he forgot I was never someone to be pushed around. Panicked, he abruptly ended the live stream, then grabbed my arm and dragged me into the hallway. Maya, I know I didn't ask you first, but I promised to pay for their compensation and medical bills. That was my mistake. Let's go talk about it privately. Okay. Oh, so now he suddenly can't bear to part with my money. I shook off his hand coldly and sneered. Is there anything you haven't done wrong? You didn't just help your little childhood sweetheart get her medical expenses covered. You're trying to make me foot the bill. Ethan avoided the question and tried to change the subject. Maya, come on. You have money. They were all my friends. What's wrong with giving them a little money for comfort? If word got out, people would only say you're generous and kind. It even helped the reputation of our company. I stared calmly at the expensive ring Ethan had once bought with such extravagance, now glinting on my hand. This was the first thing I took back, and there would be more. You're wrong, Ethan, I said coolly. It's my company, not our company. And no matter how much money there is, it's still my money. I decide whose life it buys. You've gone too far this time. I want to break up with you. Ethan panicked and kept trying to soothe me, but I walked away without looking back. After that, Ethan began bombarding me with messages begging for reconciliation. And from the surveillance footage, I saw that every time he did that, Quinn would erupt into an argument with him. The ring I had shown during that interview became a bomb waiting to explode between the two of them. No matter how Ethan tried to explain, Quinn refused to give in. She's the evil woman who killed your child, Ethan. And don't you want to be with me? As long as we get rid of Maya Lynn, we can be together. We'll avenge the baby. Soon after, Quinn accepted an interview with the media. Before we went into the water, I saw Maya on the phone with the lifeguards. If she knew there could be an accident, why didn't she stop us? Why didn't she call them immediately? The news outlet even helpfully attached footage of me making that call. The interview went viral in an instant. Countless gossip blogs and clickbait accounts joined in, twisting the narrative and painting me as a clout-chasing influencer who had delayed rescue efforts on purpose, making me the sole culprit behind the deaths. With Quinn fanning the flames, the tragic accident became my calculated murder. Shockingly, many people believed it. Only a small portion of viewers who had seen the earlier livestream defended me in the comments, but their voices were drowned out by waves of abuse. Before long, even the few comments that supported me were completely buried. The internet became a bloodbath of hate directed solely at me. I watched the storm rage online with a calm heart. Compared to the feeling of being drowned in my past life, what was a little online hate? Let them climb high. Only then will the fall hurt more. Just as public opinion reached its peak, I launched the next step of my plan. I hired more commenters and began spreading information about how dangerous that section of the coastline was. Soon, locals stepped forward to confirm that the area was high risk, not listed as a tourist site, and only known by a handful of people. Those videos blew up, and with them came a new wave of suspicion. With careful nudging, the situation snowballed. The families of the victims, upon learning about the danger of that location, began questioning all three of us, me, Ethan, and Quinn, demanding accountability for the lack of safety precautions. As I expected, when push came to shove, Ethan and Quinn once again tried to pin the blame on me. I clicked into their new live stream using an alt account. Sure enough, the two were at it again, crying on cue. "It was Maya's idea to go into the water," Ethan said, his voice heavy with false remorse. "I even tried to stop her, but she insisted that we needed something exciting to celebrate such a rare gathering. No matter what we said, she wouldn't listen." Watching this display, I couldn't help but sigh. What a shame they hadn't gone into acting. They would have won awards. Unaware of the truth, viewers were quickly swayed by their performance and began tearing into me again. What kind of person does that? She basically killed people. She needs to be held accountable for the victims. As the stream filled with fresh waves of hate, I saw the smug satisfaction bloom on Ethan and Quinn's faces. Unfortunately for them, that smile wouldn't last long. I gently pressed a finger on my mouse and released a video I had prepared for this exact moment. Because I used my real name to upload it, sharp-eyed viewers quickly realized that I was the very woman Ethan and Quinn had been slandering in their stream. But before they could flood me with hate, they noticed something strange. My video told an entirely different story. In it, Ethan and Quinn were seen arm in arm, clearly looking like a couple. They glanced toward the camera with smug expressions. Quinn scoffed, "Oh, you can't swim? Then just stand there and film us." "How lame," Ethan added. Then the two of them waved over the others on the shore, calling them into the sea. But among the group, there were still some hesitant voices. They pointed at the warning sign on the beach and said, "Doesn't that sign clearly say swimming is prohibited? Maybe we shouldn't go." Ethan immediately sneered and mocked. "You're not scared, are you? Let's be clear. This is Quinn's birthday. We don't welcome party poopers. If you're not coming, then leave. And if you're afraid of dying, stay out. We won't take responsibility." Quinn nodded in agreement beside him, proudly surveying the crowd with a smug smile. Perhaps it was because of her status as the birthday girl. Or maybe the alcohol had lowered their inhibitions, but those who had hesitated before were quickly pressured or provoked. One by one, they followed Ethan and Quinn into the sea. The video ended there, but it was more than enough to completely tear down Ethan and Quinn's poorly constructed lies. The internet finally saw the truth. They had been manipulated, used like pawns. These two were the real culprits who had caused innocent people to die. Outrage flooded into their live stream. Comments came pouring in. "Shameless. You killed people and tried to make someone else take the fall. If she hadn't saved the video, you two would have ruined her completely. I thought Ethan was dating Maya and he turned around and did this to her. All for another woman. There's something seriously twisted about their relationship." Voices condemning them drowned out anything in their defense. Neither of them had even thought to shut off the comment section. They just stood there in stunned silence. By the time they realized what was happening, it was already too late. Their stream was spiraling out of control. They hastily shut it down in disgrace. But something still felt wrong to them. They opened WBO and sure enough, the #1 trending topic was the very video I had uploaded during their live stream. Their mocking attitude toward the warning signs by the water, captured clearly on video, had been seen by millions. The scandal surged back into the public spotlight with renewed intensity. When the families of the deceased saw the footage, they were livid. One after another, they stormed into the hospital demanding answers. And they weren't alone. Outraged citizens who had followed the story showed up too, disgusted by Ethan and Quinn's behavior. They gathered together, shouting insults and demanding justice. Naturally, all of this was captured on countless smartphones and uploaded online. It was easy for me to stay informed about everything as it happened. The hospital corridor descended into chaos. Whether the security staff had slacked off intentionally, or there were simply too many people to control, I didn't know. But the crowd quickly found out which room Quinn was in, and barged right in without hesitation. Inside, both Ethan and Quinn looked terrified. But even then, they were still stubborn, clinging to their lies. Ethan raised his voice, his neck tense with frustration. "This wasn't our fault. Sure, I encouraged them to go in, but I didn't force anyone. If you can't swim and still jump in, isn't that asking to die?" Quinn, curled up beside him, muttered softly, "Exactly. I lost my baby trying to save them. Their lives aren't worth as much as my child's." Her voice wasn't loud, but in the small room, everyone heard it clearly. The fury in the air ignited instantly. No one cared anymore that she was a woman or recovering from an injury. Several people rushed forward and grabbed at them. Ethan jumped in shock. By the time he reacted, Quinn was already getting hit, fists landing as she screamed in pain. She cried and wailed in a panic. But for some reason, Ethan froze. His hand hovered midair as if he was about to help her, but he didn't. Instead, fear and cowardice filled his eyes. He avoided her desperate gaze, turned, and quietly slipped out of the room, disappearing into the crowd. Fortunately, the long-absent security guards finally arrived. They pushed through the chaos and found Quinn barely conscious. Blood was seeping through the bandages on her abdomen, and she had stopped crying, her face pale as she slipped into unconsciousness. The guards gave a long, hard look at the agitated crowd but didn't take any aggressive action. Instead, they turned and called for nurses. I understood. Even though they were just hospital security, they were still human. Seeing a woman who had indirectly caused multiple deaths, how could anyone wholeheartedly defend her? Soon, Quinn was wheeled into emergency care once again. The police arrived shortly after, and took everyone involved in the disturbance to the station. The noisy hallway finally quieted down. It was only then that Ethan reappeared, having fled earlier out of fear that he'd be beaten too. He slipped into a bathroom stall and hid, completely ignoring whether Quinn on the hospital bed was alive or dead. Only after everyone had cleared out did he slowly step back out, just in time to run into a doctor looking for the patient's family. The doctor handed Ethan a thick stack of diagnostic forms and a payment slip. "You're Miss Quinn's relative, right? Her wound has reopened, and there's a risk of infection. She needs a second surgery. Please pay as soon as possible. The surgical team is waiting." Ethan stood there frozen. I wasn't surprised. When he was with me, he always liked to act like he was some big spender. But in reality, he constantly found ways to make me cover the bill behind the scenes. After parties and events, he'd bask in all the praise and admiration as if it were nothing. He got used to the illusion and forgot his true financial status. At this point, I doubted he even had enough saved to cover Quinn's mounting medical costs. He grabbed the invoice and scanned it with disbelief, only to discover that it had been me who paid for Quinn's initial surgery when they first arrived at the hospital. He had actually believed he was capable of pulling this off. But faced with the doctor's pressing tone, he had no choice. Despite his reluctance, he stiffened his neck and muttered, Give me a moment. I'll figure out the payment." He stepped aside and took out his phone, calling me. I'd been waiting for this moment. The call barely rang twice before I picked up. On the other end, Ethan tried his best to sound devastated. "Maya, why did you freeze the card? Quinn got hurt when those people stormed into the hospital. She needs emergency surgery, and we have to pay right now." He still thought I was in the dark, that a few sweet words were all it would take to manipulate me into handing over money again, just like I used to. But as I held the evidence I had carefully collected on Ethan, I had no interest in playing along anymore. I responded coolly. Ethan, we're no longer together. I'm not giving you another cent. There was a long silence on the other end before his voice returned, filled with disbelief. I didn't agree to the breakup. Are you still going to just let Quinn die like this? She's my sister. We're family, you and me. I couldn't help but laugh coldly. Oh, I must have missed the part where sleeping with your sister became a family tradition. Ethan immediately panicked. Maya, you're jealous because I was taking care of Quinn, aren't you? But I swear we're just like siblings. You can't say things like that. Seeing that he still insisted on clinging to the lie, I didn't bother wasting another second. I forwarded him all the documents I'd prepared. Emails, screenshots, transaction records. These past days, I hadn't just been pushing back against the online smear campaign. I was also preparing for what came next. They had betrayed me, hurt me, and I intended to take back everything they owed me, piece by piece. Ethan must have seen the evidence I sent, because the line went silent. I chuckled softly. Good. So you've seen it. That makes this easier. Not only will I never give you another penny, I'm also taking back every cent you spent on Quinn. Get ready for a lawyer's letter. Without waiting for a response, I hung up. Then I blocked both Ethan and Quinn on every platform. Looking at the mess on my desk, I exhaled slowly. This time, I'd made sure they had no chance to turn the tables on me. But I wasn't going to relax just yet. I began preparing for the formal lawsuit. Some peaceful days passed. Then, just as I thought Ethan and Quinn had finally vanished from my life, news of them reached me again, this time from court. Ethan, unable to afford Quinn's medical bills, had eventually sold off the old house left to him by his parents. Unfortunately for him, while the house was large, it was in a remote area and poorly maintained. The sale barely covered Quinn's last surgery, but the continuing treatment and medications were far beyond what they could afford. The financial strain quickly drove a wedge between them. In court, I watched as Quinn jabbed a finger at Ethan and screamed, "Don't think I don't know. You ran off and hid when those people stormed into the hospital. You let them beat me half to death. You did this to me. You're responsible." And Ethan, the past few days, had been buried in a mountain of bills, dizzy and overwhelmed. Hearing Quinn shout accusations at him only made his temper flare. He finally exploded, yelling, "If you hadn't said what you said, none of this would have happened. Those people wouldn't have gone berserk if not for you." The two of them, once so in love, now stood on opposite sides, hurling blame at each other like sworn enemies. Eventually, Ethan threw down the medical bill and stormed off, announcing that he was cutting all ties with Quinn and would no longer pay a cent for her expenses. But his troubles were far from over. Soon after, Ethan received his first legal summons from none other than the families of the deceased. As it turned out, after being taken to the police station, those families explained the incident in full. Since they were cooperative and remorseful, they were fined a small amount for disturbing public order and released with my anonymous assistance. However, they quickly learned how to seek justice through legal means. One after another, they contacted lawyers and formally filed a lawsuit against Ethan. As the person who had incited the victims to go into the sea, Ethan was held directly responsible. He now faced paying a large compensation to the victims' families. But he was flat broke. Desperate, Ethan began begging anyone he knew for help, calling in favors, groveling. But word of his character had long since spread. Everyone distanced themselves from him. With no other options, he turned to loan sharks just to avoid prison. But before he could even catch his breath, a lawyer's notice from my end landed right in his hands. In court, when he saw my familiar face sitting across from him, he looked completely defeated. His eyes pleaded with me. But I felt nothing. Not sorrow, not hesitation, only satisfaction. So this is what it's like when you no longer love someone. You can pay them back for all the pain they caused without flinching. In the end, Ethan was forced to pawn his ID and borrow money again, just to pay me back what he'd taken. After that, he vanished for real. And I couldn't care less. Instead, I felt genuinely happy, reborn, free, finally taking my life seriously. 100 times more than I did in my previous life. It wasn't until a year later that I heard about Ethan and Quinn again. Apparently, Quinn regretted leaving Ethan less than a week after their split. She tried to find him, only to discover the house he once lived in had long been sold. The new owners had never even heard of him. He had vanished. Without money, Quinn couldn't stay in the hospital anymore. She had relied entirely on Ethan to survive. She had no skills, no means of support, and the long-term effects of her injuries left her weak and sickly. She ended up homeless, begging on the streets. Before long, her illness relapsed, and she died there, cold and alone. As for Ethan, his fate was even worse. The loan sharks eventually tracked him down. The only jobs he could find were manual day labor gigs, nowhere near enough to cover the interest, so they dumped him overseas. No one knows for sure whether he became a slave or had his organs sold. But none of that matters to me anymore. All I know is they met their ends because of the sins they committed. And as for me, my path now lies wide open, full of light.